Hello and welcome to Astrology with Zeke. Today we're going to be going over the upcoming lunar eclipse. It's going to be in Pisces, and the exact date will depend on where exactly you are in the world. For me and my fellow Americans, this will be at night on the 27th of August. But if you're over in Europe, this will be like really, really early in the morning on the 28th. Um, so this is going to be the final lunar eclipse on the Pisces Virgo axis, as you know, the nodes have moved into Aquarius and Leo. So this kind of symbolizes to me kind of like a wrapping up of perhaps any unfinished business you have from last year. Overall, I kind of looked at the chart, and this one probably is going to be rather rocky. Um, so unless it happens to be doing something pretty positive in your chart, it's probably going to be a rather bumpy ride. So with that out of the way, let's just go ahead and take a look. Okay. So, yeah, this lunar eclipse is going to be at 4 degrees Pisces. As always, lunar eclipse is basically a full moon on steroids. You'll probably feel the effects of it instead of like for a month, it'll probably be closer to like 3 months. And just like a full moon, it's basically like the culmination or the completion of a cycle. Kind of like a time to reap what you have sown, so to speak. It's going to be conjunct the North Node, Rahu, so this is going to symbolize an increase in something. And yeah, right off the bat, so again, on a full moon, excuse me, on a full moon, the moon is always exactly opposite the sun, meaning the sun will be in Virgo, as we can see right here. But also Mercury, which rules Virgo, is almost exactly conjunct, just at 5 degrees with the sun at 4. Um, But with it being a conjunct the north node over here, that means there's an increase in something. So it's the completion of a cycle with something increasing. And whatever's increasing is going to include Piscean themes, given that, moon's in Pisces. Of course, what exactly that means for you depends on what house this falls in your own chart, which of course I will go over closer to the end of the video, and I'll have time stacked each rising sign of where it's going to hit on your chart based on whole sign. In case you're a person who doesn't know what the rising sign is, you can look at your sun sign. So, if you're an Aries sun, you can just click on Aries Rising, and it won't be as accurate, but it might kind of give you kind of a glimpse as to what this eclipse has in store for you. So yeah, I'll just go ahead and dive in just what Moon in Pisces is. So Pisces is, a very spiritual sign. It's the sign of the ancient archetypal priest. They also tend to be artists and dreamers. And with the moon there, it symbolizes someone who's deeply spiritual. Um, Especially if this shows up in a natal chart, it's probably someone who's deeply spiritual, but also very sensitive, deeply sensitive, and they can be much more prone to escapism than most people, as the harshness of the real world can be a bit much for them. So they tend to need extra R&R and just a break, so to speak, from reality in order to stay healthy. With this full moon specifically, this is kind of like the culmination of you building up some kind of spiritual experience, or perhaps you're going to be feeling a lot more artistic or open to like escapism. What's interesting is the host or the dispositor of this eclipse is going to be Jupiter, is the classical ruler of Pisces is Jupiter, which for the record, I only use classical rulership. And Jupiter is there in Leo. So this kind of tells me this one's going to lean a lot more towards an artistic side and taking a leadership role or becoming more comfortable in the spotlight within perhaps some kind of creative role or becoming more comfortable with expressing yourself artistically or spiritually, and perhaps not being as shy about it, which overall I would say is a positive thing. Perhaps this is something you've been working towards. Maybe you've been getting in your own way with perhaps a bit of over analyzing, given that, the moon's going to be making an opposition to Mercury in Virgo, and Mercury in Virgo is hyper analytical. Also, because this is a conjunct the North Node, there's going to be an increase in whatever this brings for you. Here's the but. Here's the but. This eclipse is part of a T-square. So, as you'll see, of course, Moon is opposing the Sun and Mercury, but it also squares Uranus and Gemini. So, of course, Uranus and Gemini, it's squaring both the Moon and the Sun-Mercury conjunction, meaning T-square. So, Uranus and Gemini is a sign that's has a lot to do with like a communication intellect. It's kind of like the other side of Virgo, as they're both ruled by Mercury. And given that it's Uranus, which is a planet that's about extremes, upsets, eccentricities, I think personally what's going to be in the spotlight probably a lot is technology, rapid advancements in technology, and especially how the public interfaces with it and communicates with one another. Anybody who isn't living under a rock knows that AI is a big deal right now, and it's becoming almost a part of our daily lives, especially with how we communicate with other people. And if you ever interact on social media, it's like, am I interacting with a bot? Like half the interactions you have are probably with bots. But I think there's going to be further upsets and further things going on within the tech scene, especially keep an eye on social media, keep an eye on advancements within AI and how that's being implemented within the greater society. And that's certainly going to make any upsets if perhaps you have creative projects or something artistic, or maybe you're reaching into delving into your own spirituality, is you have to watch out for slop, AI slop. It's everywhere. And what's really unfortunate about having AI slop being so prevalent is now everybody's getting accused of you using AI, even people who aren't, or you see a video and it's a real one, but maybe someone who doesn't like it will say, "Oh, it's AI." So now nobody trusts anything anymore, and you can't trust your eyes anymore for a lot of stuff. As AI images, it's only going to keep on getting better and better and better. It's getting harder and harder to detect what's real and what's not. Even AI videos from a year ago used to be really easy to spot, and as the days go by, it gets harder and harder to realize, oh wait, there's something not quite right, and it takes a hypercritical mind to realize what you're looking at, and even then, it can be really sneaky. So I think that's what a lot of what this T square is talking about, and that could be what the issues are. This is probably going to be a much bigger deal on a societal level, as unless this T square is doing something in your chart specifically, given that it's including an outer planet, they tend to include more generational things and societal things. So I suppose we can take some solace in that, but still, do be prepared for a bumpy ride. Speaking of outer planets, the next formation that I want to talk about is a Yod, or finger of God. That includes this Pluto in Aquarius, Neptune in Aries. They're making a sextile, and they are both making what's called a quincunx to this Sun Mercury conjunction, or pointing at it, which is why it's called a finger of God. It's like a finger pointing at it, and it indicates something that's like a fated, unavoidable, and highly stressful. So Pluto tends to be the abuse, misuse of power, and hidden things, secrets. And with Neptune, that's about illusions, dissolving boundaries. It could be diseases. But with this sextile specifically, is what it tells me is there's probably going to be a big question in how you as an individual interface with within your own tribe, within your own community. Perhaps some secrets have been revealed to you, or you have a sudden burst of understanding, or just a sudden realization, and it's gonna force you to put yourself in a position where you have to use hyper rationality and analyze every tiny little thing to figure out maybe where you went wrong or how to progress through the situation. So in that sense, it's pretty stressful. That being said, when it comes to this kind of stuff happening with transiting planets, unless it is specifically doing something in your chart, like one of these planets is like exactly conjunct a placement in your own chart, I wouldn't worry about it too much, but I still feel the need to bring it up because you never know if it is affecting individuals. So, um, yeah, the other thing I wanted to bring up is there is a second T square, although this one's a lot looser, and it's going to involve this Venus and Libra opposing retrograde Saturn and Aries, both of which are squaring Mars and Cancer. Now, the reason why I say it's loose is because the square Mars is making to Libra, well, it's still technically there. It's a 10-degree orb, which is pretty loose. It's separating, which also makes it weaker. That being said, it's still there, so I do want to talk about it and bring it up. Um, so two of these planets are very weak, that being Saturn and Aries, as Saturn in Aries is in fall, and Mars in Cancer is also in fall, which just means that they both have a great deal of trouble expressing themselves fully. So, for example, Mars in Cancer, uh, Cancer is a sign that concerns itself a lot with security, um, and how we get emotional fulfillment. It does have a preoccupation with the past, and with Mars being there, which is the sign, the planet of war and aggression. Of course, these like do not mix whatsoever. So there's like a much greater capacity for passive aggressiveness, or just having a lot of trouble with dealing with confrontation or anger. From a physical point of view, it also means your physical energy levels are probably going to be very, very depleted during this transit. Then with Saturn and Aries, what that means is Saturn has a lot of trouble with being cool, calm, collected, implementing order and discipline, showing up every day, doing the boring, dumb stuff that you got to do to get results. You'll probably see a lot of things requiring a hell of a lot more patience from you on your end. Probably a lot of dumb stumbling blocks, things just not happening. Um, So with these two, with Saturn squaring Mars, what that tells me is that it's probably this is probably going to be exhausting, just emotionally, physically draining and exhausting. These stoppages, so to speak. It's also going to be a lot easier to lose your temper, really easy to lose your temper. However, doing that in a dignified way is gonna increase or decrease rather. You're gonna have a It's going to be much easier for passive aggressiveness, so to speak, or, freaking out in a very undignified ways over minor things. So it's going to take a much more, great deal of effort on your own part to handle it. And what I will say is the Mars squaring Saturn, it is making a weird form of reception as Mars rules Aries. So what I'll say is if you do lose your temper, it's probably going to be less passive aggressive and more exploding over things that really aren't that big of a deal. But perhaps because you've been having trouble with handling stuff that is a big deal, you start lashing out. And that's what that tells me. This also is probably going to be a really good time for you to just rest a lot more and take a chill pill. But it might be harder to do that. Then with the Mars Venus square, with Venus and Libra, Venus is domicile in Libra. It's very concerned with aesthetics, with fairness, getting along. It can be indecisive. So with this square, granted, it's loose, it's separating, so it's not going to be as big of a deal, but there could still be issues with relationships, perhaps not being able to come to terms with each other, but you're also going to have a lot of trouble with assertive communication with one another. Because again, Mars is not assertive in Cancer whatsoever. Um, so there might be going along, someone might be going along to get along, but behind the scenes be incredibly upset and will lash out in weird ways. Where the other person will just be like, "What was that?" Uh, that being said, because it's so loose, I don't think it's going to be as big of a deal, you know. But because there is a T square, I do feel the need to bring it up. So, um, yeah, I do think that's going to be most of the aspects I want to talk about. A little bit on the good side. So the dispositor of this lunar eclipse is going to be Jupiter and Leo, and it is making a nice trine to Saturn. So what this tells me is anytime Saturn and Jupiter are getting along, that's normally a pretty good sign. So even though there's probably going to be like a bunch of dumb stumbling blocks and upsets, and you're going to have a hard time with following through as your energy levels are going to be depleted, I will say you're probably going to have enough stores of grit to see whatever problems or issues you have to see them through. As Jupiter and Leo loves the spotlight and loves being seen handling business. So even though perhaps on the inside you're going to be like going, "Oh my God, is this going to end?" You're probably outwardly going to be like, "No, I'm going to handle business." And if anything, you're probably going to be angry and lashing out at people. But I don't know. I kind of like the fact that Jupiter's making an aspect, so it kind of it helps with that troubled Mars and Cancer energy and kind of boosts it a little bit in that you're going to be seen as more powerful rather than petty, which could help. So I'll give that out there and be like, "Hey, this could be good." So a little nugget of something to be happy about, as I do think this one's going to be a really bumpy ride for a lot of people. Unless most of the aspects are actually doing something nice within your own chart. So yeah, with that out of the way, we're gonna just go ahead and I'll probably go into each rising sign and what this has in store for you. All right, so now I'm going to be going over rising signs. Of course, I'm going to go ahead and go in order, starting with Aries. And for each rising sign, I'm just going to do the T square that includes, the moon, the sun, Mercury, and Uranus, since I think that's the biggest formation and this lunar eclipse. So, with that out of the way, I'm just going to go ahead and get started with Aries risings. So, for an Aries rising, this lunar eclipse is going to be in your 12th house. So, the 12th house, it's all about places of isolation, self-undoing behavior, your connection to the spirit world. Uh, which of course means that the Sun Mercury conjunction is going to be in the sixth house, which has to do with daily habits, your critical thinking patterns, how you approach work, and health. It can include your relationship with pets as well. And the Uranus will be in your third house. So I would say this and this one, health is probably going to be pretty prevalent for you. It's going to be the culmination of something and with an increase. So I would say this lunar eclipse, taking the time every day to pay attention to what you're doing with health routines, it's going to be especially important for you. There might be doctor visits for you, maybe even hospital stays. That being said, that doesn't necessarily mean it will be for you individually. It's just more likely that it's going to be for you as an individual. I would also watch out when you're driving on the road, be extra careful. Because third house has to do with short distance travel, communication, but it also has to do with your vehicle. So with that Uranus there, that's extremes, upsets, something sudden out of the blue. And given that it's a T square, it's an adverse aspect. I wouldn't necessarily say, watch out for road rage unless you're prone to road rage. um, but I would be careful on the road if I was you, because I would say the likelihood of a car wreck happening for you will be much greater because that could explain, why health is going to be prevalent for you, why a place of isolation might be uh, prevalent for you. Um, on the other hand, this could also be like a very spiritual time for you. It could be like a period of isolation because, you're getting to know, yourself. You're getting in touch with the inner you, the spirits, gods, and so it's like a voluntary isolation, if you will, and it's kind of like could be just a period of a serious reevaluation and what's important for you, especially on the day to day. So, yeah, I think that's gonna about cover it for Aries risings. Next, we're gonna move on to Taurus risings. So, for Taurus risings, this lunar eclipse will be in the 11th house. Um, with that Sun, Mercury in the fifth and Uranus in the second. So, 11th house, that's all about your friends, social groups, peers. And fifth house is your creativity, relationship with children, what you do for fun. And, second house is all about money, finances. Are you any good with money? So I would say that you're probably reaching a pretty big breakthrough within a friends group, especially something that brings you spiritual fulfillment or nourishment. Um, Especially if this friend group or peer group has a lot to do with your own creativity and how you express yourself. Perhaps there's a big breakthrough. However, here's the but. Here's the but because, the T square, there's probably going to be some pretty big upsets within finances. Whether they're good or bad, it's really hard to say, of course, without, your individual chart right here. But I would say that could potentially put a strain on anything you do socially, and it might require you to get extra creative in solving those problems. That being said, overall, I don't think it's going to be that bad. And of course, Uranus is an outer planet. So its influence on individuals, I would say, is less so. Outer planets tend to have more to do with at least the societal level. So that being said, don't be shocked if there's some upsets when it comes to money that gets in the way of things. But overall, I think you'll be all right. So Yep, that's pretty quick. Next, we're just going to move right on to Gemini Rising. Okay, so Gemini Rising, so this is going to be in an angular house for you guys. The lunar eclipse is going to happen in the 10th, which means Sun Mercury is in the fourth, with Uranus in the first. So this could be, there's probably going to be a big breakthrough within career, or at least a big change in career, perhaps related to the self, with how you see the world. There's probably going to be something that could potentially be very upsetting to you, that could also upset your work and home balance. Um, Again, what exactly that is, it's very hard to say, especially with Uranus, as it's about extremes and upsets and stuff, and a big old surprise. It's hard to say what exactly that could be. Um, but personally, I would say it's probably going to be some kind of radical breakthrough within the self that could really shake things up for you when it comes to work. So, even though strictly speaking, this is an adverse aspect, it could potentially be good. So, but on the other hand, it could be bad. So, hard to say. So, in my opinion, I would say it's best to carry on and just keep your head down and keep at it, whatever it is you're doing. Because if you're just sitting there, riddled with anxiety about something that could happen, I mean, you're just going to go nuts. So, yeah, I don't know. The feeling I get for Gemini Risings is this lunar eclipse probably isn't going to be bad. Probably. Don't quote me on that one. But, you know, yeah. So we'll see. Anyways, moving right along, I am gonna go on to the next one, which of course will be my Cancer risings. Hmm. So, Cancer rising. This lunar eclipse is going to be in the ninth house, with Sun Mercury in the third and Uranus in the 12th. Hmm. So, ninth house is all about higher education, learning outside of, primary school. So it could be college, but it could also be, self-directed study, especially if you're an autodidact. It also has to do with like foreign things, long distance travel, and also religion and spirituality. So I would say there's going to be a big push pull. There probably has been a big push pull with, um, perhaps you've been wanting to flee the scene, so to speak, or maybe you just feel like it's time for a change of scenery. Perhaps you've reached a big religious, spiritual breakthrough, or if you're into some higher learning, whether that's in your university or self-directed, or perhaps you finally made a breakthrough with some project you've been working on within yourself. And this could potentially be hard because it could be the result of an unforeseen, perhaps an unforeseen attack from a hidden enemy, as that Uranus is going to be in the 12th house, which 12th house also has to do with hidden enemies. So perhaps someone you thought was a friend does something and it kind of forces you to reevaluate things. Or, it could be a sudden period of isolation, kind of forces you to reevaluate what's important in life. So, yeah, I would say this one's probably going to be interesting, uh, no matter what exactly that happens. So we shall see. Anyways, moving right along, we're going to move on now to my Leo risings. So, Leo risings, this eclipse, it's going to be in your eighth house, which is the house of transformation, death, rebirth. It's also known as the house of sorrows. It could also have to do with debts and how you feel about your spouse. Sun Mercury conjunction will be in the second house, which is, of course, about finances and how you handle or deal with your money. It could also have to do with your values. And the Uranus will be right there in the 11th house, which, of course, is your peers, social groups. So I would say this one's probably going to be rough for you guys. Um, because as this eclipse is happening on the North Node, which means an increase, and this is for you will be in the eighth house. I would say it's probably going to be an increase in um, probably something that's rather hard for you, especially with how you relate with if you're in a significant with you have a significant other. It could perhaps be how you relate to say your spouse and your peer groups. There could be a pretty big clash there, or just a sudden upset. Um, it could also indicate a breakup. That won't, of course, be the case for everyone, um, but that could be it. Either way, I do think money is probably going to be a big issue for you during this transit because, with the moon being opposite Mercury and the sun in the second house, and, eighth house kind of having to do with debt. Perhaps there's been a lot of overspending or being rather frivolous with your money, which of course is going to force you to, start being a lot more conservative with how you spend your money, which of course could lead to upsets with the social groups, meaning, you can't go out anymore. You're forced to become a homebody because, you just can't afford to go out with friends. Um, so yeah, it could be rather rough and uh, a hard one, but we'll see how it goes. Um, what's always best for times of isolation is that's always a really good time to start doing inner work, to start looking at the self and finding ways you can improve. So even though it's, being lonely sucks, in every period of loneliness, there's always an opportunity to improve. Um, so perhaps that's a way to perhaps look at it. So, anyways, sorry to be the bearer of bad news for you guys. But I gotta call it like it is. All right. Moving on to our next rising sign. Next up is gonna be Virgo risings. So for you guys, as your rising sign is another mutable sign, this one is going to be on angular houses, meaning the lunar eclipse is going to happen in the seventh house with the Sun, Mercury in the first, Uranus in the 10th. So what does this mean? This could be a big upset, especially if you're in a serious relationship. There could be a few ways to look at this. This could just indicate maybe you're getting married. Like if you're already engaged, this could just be you're married because hey, guess what? Getting married is a big life change. and it's going to force you to reevaluate how you handle and deal with change in the world, especially in relationship with your partner. Take it from me. I'm married. Uh, I'll be 7 years in a month, so I can certainly speak to that. Even if you get along very well with your spouse, it's still there's still give and take, and I mean that could be a positive. However, if you already are married, um, I mean, I wouldn't say this indicates a breakup because, of course, that would be the other thing you got to ask. Well, hey, does this mean a breakup? Because the culmination of something that is increasing. And while we do have that negative aspect with Uranus, it's in the 10th house. That doesn't exactly indicate a breakup to me. There's not really anything here that indicates, well, I don't know. There could be arguments within an existing marriage. Um, I suppose that's possible. So yeah, I'll walk that back. Perhaps there could be breakups. Um, but you know what? The seventh house doesn't just have to do with marriage. It's also one-on-one relationships and could also be clients. So there could be a big, massive breakthrough when it comes to clients. If that's the kind of job you have, where you work on a one-on-one basis with people, where perhaps there's just a sudden breakthrough with clients and it's just really stressful and a big sudden increase in workload that's hard to handle. So there's another positive one. Um, yeah, yeah, I'm gonna be honest. Like, I just don't see. I don't think that there's this lunar eclipse indicates a breakup. So unless it's specifically doing something in your chart, of course, always got to add that caveat. Um, so tentatively, I would say it's positive while stressful. It's what's called eustress. So it's stress that's incurred from doing something positive. It's like, during Christmas dinner, if you're the one hosting, it's really stressful, but it's because it's a holiday. So this could be a big period of eustress for you. Anyways, that's a new word for you. You're welcome. All right. That'll about do it for Virgo risings. Next, we're going to move on to Libra rising. All right. So, Libra risings. Let's see. This eclipse will be happening in the sixth house, with Sun Mercury being in the 12th and Uranus being in the ninth house. So, sixth house is all about daily routines, your health, especially on a day to day basis, um, and how you approach work, your critical thinking patterns. 12th house has to do with places of isolation, so it's kind of related to health in that way, but it also has to do with like self-undoing behaviors, hidden enemies. And ninth house is foreign places, long distance travel, higher learning, and spirituality. So I would say for you guys, health, especially on a day-to-day basis, is probably going to be a big deal. Um, yeah, so if you've been doing anything uh, on a day-to-day basis that you shouldn't, health-wise, uh, this is probably going to be made obvious and prevalent to you, which is going to force you to uh, suddenly, but with certainty, reevaluate how you approach daily living. That being said, because the sixth house does have to do with how we approach work, um, this especially if you're the kind of person who works within an institution, like say you're a police officer, you work at a prison or a hospital, there could be a radical change within your worldview and your understanding of reality and your environment that kind of forces you to reevaluate how you approach things. So there's another positive way to look at it, but I would say that'd be hyper specific to people of a very specific kind of career field. Uh, So yeah. Anyways, I don't think this is going to be too big a one, unless, of course, you've been naughty when it comes to health. But yeah, I think that'll about do it for you guys. Next up will be my Scorpio Risings. All right, so Scorpio. For you guys, this one is going to be in the fifth house with Sun, Mercury in the 11th, and Uranus in the 8th. Hmm. So, fifth house has to do with your relationship with children. It can indicate how fertile you are. It also has to do with creativity and things you do for fun. Uh, the 11th house, which the Sun, Mercury are in the 11th house, is your peer groups, you know, what you're known for, your reputation, and Uranus is in the 8th house, which is the house of sorrows. It could also have to do with debts and shared finances. So I'm going to be very careful about how I say this. If you are a woman and you're thinking about conceiving, I would hold off for the next couple of months. That's not to say anything bad will happen should you already be pregnant. I'm not a doctor, I'm not a medical professional. I also don't know what's going on in your chart. However, I would be very careful over the next 2, 3 months if I was you. Um, with that out of the way, I will say that there's probably going to be some pretty big upsets that are going to be like gut punches to you that could quite possibly be happening within the next 2 or 3 months or so. And I think it's going to require you to come up with very creative solutions um, with how you handle it. And it's going to force you to look at all the tiny details and maybe even reevaluate certain friendships. You know, do they serve you? Don't they serve you? So I'm sorry to say, but I think this one's probably going to be pretty rough for you guys. And I would just be especially careful when it comes to your health, when it comes to who you spend time with. You know, I would say trust your intuition, trust your gut above all else, um, and take care of yourself. Anyways, moving on. I'm going to move on to the next sign, which, of course, will be Sagittarius Rising. So, Sagittarius, you are a mutable sign, meaning this lunar eclipse will be in an angular house. The moon itself will be in the fourth house, which is your home, your roots, where you come from, which obviously means the Sun Mercury conjunction is going to be up there in the 10th house, which is your public life, career. And Uranus is going to be in the seventh house, which is, marriage, one on one relationships, and clients. So, kind of what this is telling me is there could be potentially be more problems at home and personal relationships within your home. So if you're married or have a significant other, um, there could be problems within your marriage due to sudden increases or sudden demands at work that kind of pull you away from home and make it harder um, for you to get that rest and needed time to kind of recharge your social battery. Could also mean that, that's what's perhaps causing maybe issues with partners. If the kind of job you have is one with clients, that's what this could mean. It could just mean that perhaps you've had a sudden increase in clientele that makes it harder for you to deal with each individual client fairly and effectively in a way that they feel is satisfactory. Again, also means probably getting the needed rest time is probably going to be pretty difficult for you. So this is probably going to be rather stressful. Whether or not it will be ultimately positive is hard to say. So what I would say as a piece of parting advice is do everything you can to take rest time. And if you gotta, be sure to establish firm boundaries that you do not bend on if you have too much on your plate. Do not be afraid to say no. So, anyways, I think that one's pretty easy, pretty quick. We're going to move right along to our next rising sign being Capricorn. So, for Capricorn rising, this lunar eclipse is going to be in the third house, meaning Sun Mercury is in the ninth, and Uranus will be in the sixth. So the third house is all about your neighborhood, your vehicle. It also uh, can have something to do with siblings in early childhood. And of course, ninth house is spirituality. It can have to do with legal matters or higher learning and also long distance travel. So there's that push pull between the short travel and long distance travel. Uranus in the sixth house, that's kind of your day-to-day routines, your critical thinking patterns, your overall health. So there could be some sudden changes within your overall health that kind of forces you to reevaluate perhaps your day-to-day living situation, perhaps how you interact with your immediate neighbors within your own community. But since the third house also has to do with your vehicle, there could potentially be issues with your vehicle, perhaps a sudden accident, or maybe just, your car breaks down that kind of forces you to reevaluate what actually matters within your life. Um, yeah, so honestly, I don't think this one's going to be too big of a deal for you guys unless this eclipse is doing anything big in your own chart. Um, yeah, so yeah, I would just say keep calm, especially when it comes to your vehicle. Just be extra careful on the road and just watch out for other drivers. Anyways, moving on. Next up is going to be Aquarius Rising. Okay, so for Aquarius Risings, this eclipse will be in your second house. That means that Sun Mercury will be in the eighth with Uranus in the fifth. So for you guys, I'm just going to come right out and say it. Money, money, money. Money is going to be an issue, especially with how you handle debt. Perhaps just some things have come up and you've been put into a position where you have to spend more money. And perhaps that's why you're in debt. So this is going to force you to find a new way on how to gain financial security. And with that Uranus in the fifth house, means you're going to have to be especially creative in how you tackle this problem. You're going to have to really think outside of the box on this one. So not too fun, but yeah, finances is going to be a very big deal for you guys in the next coming months. Perhaps you've seen this one on the horizon, so you're already aware. But yeah, so I would say do be careful with how you spend money. Do be mindful of any frivolous spending that you don't need to do. Be a really good time for you to get a budget, maintain a budget. Yeah. Anyways, that one's pretty quick. So next up, we're going to do Pisces rising. So of course, since the lunar eclipse is happening in Pisces, this of course means that it's going to be in your first house. So this is going to be a big one for you guys, as first house is the self, the body, and how we approach change. And then the Sun Mercury conjunction will be in the seventh, which is marriage, one-on-one partnerships, known enemies, and Uranus is going to be in the fourth. So there's a few ways to take this. Well, for starters, this could just mean that you're getting married. If you're engaged or you have a serious partner that are considering spending your life with, this could just be an indicator that you're going to get married. Because that's always stressful. As weddings are stressful. You got to invite all the family members, friends. Where are you going to do it? It costs a lot of money, etc., etc. Not to mention, that's a whole new dynamic that you got to figure out. You know, how you approach life and your home life on a day-to-day basis. So it could be as simple as that. On a less positive note, if you are married, and especially if you're married with children, this could be more indicative of perhaps problems at home or perhaps disagreements on how you deal with raising children, you know? So I would say watch out for that. On the other hand, if since seventh house could also have to do with clients, if you're in the kind of work that where you have clients, this could just be a big increase in clientele, especially if you're an artist or you do something in the creative sphere. That's going to really push you and it's going to really challenge you and make you dig deep to meet the demands. It's probably going to be pretty stressful and it's probably going to leave very little time for you and your home life. So, yeah. That being said, if that's the case for you, if this is doing something big with clients and career, that could long term be a good thing. So even though it's stressful in the short term, it could be a good thing in the long term. So yeah, hard to say if it's positive. This all I know is that for each and every sign, this is going to be a bit of a bumpy ride. So yep, I think that's gonna about do it for all the rising signs. Yeah, this has been a fun one. And if you want to get a better idea of what this eclipse is doing in your own chart, of course, you can go ahead and book my services. Check out my website at astrologywithseek.com. And, we'll go over it and figure out what's happening. You can also go ahead, like, share, and subscribe. And yeah, I think that'll about do it for today. And we'll see you all next time.